Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Randhana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Randhana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bhad Paramahansa Padurikacharya Astotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padurikacharya Astotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayana Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiyate. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Thank you. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord who is glorified in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 14th day of March 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, entitled The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 29, Talks between Narada and King Prachinabarhi, text number 63. Yatanamiyate Chittam Ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma lakshyate chitta vrittibhihi yatanumiyate chittam ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma lakshyate chitta vrittibhihi yatanumihite chittam ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma lakshyate chitta vrittibhihi yatanumihite chittam ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma lakshyate chitta vrittibhihi yatanumiyate chittam ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma lakshyate chitta vrittibhihi yatanumiyate chittam ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma lakshyate chitta vrittibhihi yatanumihite chittam ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma lakshyate chitta vrittibhihi yatanumihite chittam ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma lakshyate chitta vrittibhihi yatanumihite chittam ubayar indriye hitai evam prag dehajam karma yata as anumiyate can be imagined, chittam one's consciousness or mental condition, ubayai both, indriya of the senses, ihitai by the activities, evam similarly, prak previous, dehajam performed by the body, karma activities, lakshyate can be perceived, chitta of consciousness, vrittibhihi by the occupations. Now before I read the translation, I need to ask Glenn something real quick. Sorry about that. Translation. One can understand the mental or conscious position of a living entity by the activities of two kinds of senses, the knowledge-acquiring senses and the executive senses. Similarly, by the mental condition of consciousness of a person, one can understand his position in the previous life. Purport. There is an English proverb that says, "The face is the index of the mind." If one is angry, his anger is immediately expressed in his face. Similarly, other mental states are reflected by the actions of the gross body. In other words, the activities of the gross body are reactions of the mental condition. The mind's activities are thinking, feeling, and willing. The willing portion of the mind is manifest by the activities of the body. The conclusion is that by the activities of the body and senses, we can understand the condition of the mind. The condition of the mind is affected by past activities in the past body. When the mind is joined with a particular sense, it immediately becomes manifest in a certain way. For instance, When there is anger in the mind, the tongue vibrates so many maledictions. Similarly, when the mind's anger is expressed through the hand, there is fighting. When it is expressed through the leg, there is kicking. There are so many ways in which the subtle activities of the mind are expressed through the various senses. The mind of a person in Krishna consciousness also acts in a similar way. The tongue chants Hare Krishna, the Maha Mantra. The hands are raised in ecstasy, and the legs dance in Krishna consciousness. These symptoms are technically called Ashta Sattvika Bhikara. Sattvika Bhikara is transformation of the mental condition in goodness, or sometimes transcendental ecstasy. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Narada Muni is continuing to describe to King Prachinabhari the process of transmigration of the soul and the manifestation of previous lives in this life, how we can see the carryover. Especially in this verse, he's talking about the subtle body, how the mind is carrying over these impressions from previous life or lives. And we see evidence of that in various manifestations of how that mind reacts to the gross body. That's what's happening here. And there'll be explanation in coming verses how sometimes we dream. In the dream we'll encounter things we never even experienced in this life. And this is coming from previous lives. So the basic message here is that we shouldn't. The first thing is to kick far away the misconception that we are this gross body, and that's like step. That's A of the ABC of spiritual life. Transmigration of the soul, reincarnation, and the process of or the law of karma, and how that works in determining what your present body is, and not only what it is, but the propensities you have, the mental condition. All of this is carried over from previous life, and it's also constantly being changed and affected by what's going on in this life. It's a very complicated affair. And I remember when I first read about this simple statement that Prabhupada gives about the mind, how it's a thinking, feeling, and willing, and how this is so illuminating. Because think about it. The mind is the center of all the senses, right? This is like sometimes called the sixth sense, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vangsa Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Munak Shashtan Indriyani Prakritistani Karshati. That every living being, every jiva soul, is my part and parcel, eternally. Probably this is, in other words, angsha. We're angsha eternally. We're not going to merge and become God, or become the supreme Brahman, or infinite. We're eternally angsha, which is a little particle. We experience it all the time. A little drop of seawater right next to the ocean here. If you taste it, it's also salty, right? So it has the qualities of the big ocean in minute degree. The other common example is the sun ray. The sun comes up, and it's warmer. So the light is there, and there's millions and trillions of little photons that comprise these sun rays, and they have their little portion of light and heat, and altogether we experience it as the sunshine, which gives us warmth and also light. So we are part and parcel of Krishna, of God. And therefore we have the propensities, we have the qualities of God to a minute degree. The first one, obvious of one, is consciousness. We ourselves are conscious beings. That's who we are. And the body is actually unconscious. We're animating it because we're inside. As soon as it doesn't work, it's a big machine. It's an extremely complicated machine. I remember a few months ago, as I usually do when I'm coming to the temple early in the morning, I'm chanting some mantras or something. And there's one spot there where it's a little bit more uneven than the others. I tripped right on my, I didn't land on my face, but I landed on my hands, and I had a couple of injuries. And I said, oh my God, how did that happen? So I was dealing with that over the next few days. And because, I lead kind of sedentary life, I don't have really so many injuries going on, but I got to see how the body repairs itself. What a miraculous thing that is. I had some serious scrapes on the hands, and so I had to bind them and make sure they didn't get infected, but over a few days, gradually, now you don't see anything. So it's really a remarkable creation, this body. But we learn in Krishna consciousness right off the bat that we actually have two bodies. We have this gross body that we see in the mirror that we commonly call the body, made up of all the senses and everything. But there's also the subtle body, which is really ultimately more significant, because when the gross body is annihilated, as it must be when death comes, the subtle body goes on. The subtle body is what carries the soul to the next gross body. And I like to use that word template. Like, as we go through life, just an ordinary life, without conscious, direction of something like Krishna consciousness, we're forming so many impressions, so many ideas are coming in, so many influences by who we associate with, what we see, what we read, what we hear, drugs you take, so many things. And they're affecting your consciousness. A lot of it is stored in the subtle and in the subconscious. Prabhupada doesn't use that word. In the coming verses, he's going to talk about that. But that's what it means, obviously, the storage. And sometimes, this is coming from previous lives. And that's why sometimes you dream of something that you never saw before. And all these different propensities you have, and what family you take your birth in, just suitable to your consciousness. It's extremely complicated. And obviously it needs an intelligence that's way beyond human intelligence to organize the whole thing. And the law of karma is, we put out this one book many, many years ago based on some of Prabhupada's lectures in the Ishopanishad and some chapters, and we called it the law of karma, an infallible justice, which maybe not as exactly as literary as it should be, but the idea is there. In other words, we're getting our just deserts, and this is also answering that perpetual problem of religion. How could there be a just God who's infinitely powerful and infinitely merciful, and allow all these poor innocent children to suffer? And what about me? I've been going to church, every week, or shul or mosque, whatever it may be, synagogue, and now suddenly my son, gets an accident, or gets killed somehow, or I come up with something. What did I do? Because there's no understanding of the continuity of our existence in this world from one body to another, and that our answer for that is ultimately there's nobody innocent. There's no innocent people suffering. Just being in the material world, having this material body, is a sign that we rebelled against the law of God. And therefore that's original sin, if you will, is being compounded by our ignorance and our performing so many other activities. So all of this is really important to understand, because then it gives us information of what we should strive for in this world. If we're simply striving for different varieties and permutations and combinations of this material energy, both gross and subtle, trying to maximize the pleasure and minimize the pain, then we're staying entangled in this material world. We remain entangled. And we don't move 1 inch toward our goal in life, was to break free of this complication. It's all a complete illusion that we can somehow find some happiness and security in this world. Whatever happiness we find is just Maya's trick to keep us bound here. It's not something that we should strive for. But we should strive for happiness, but we have to know where to really find it. And that's the key. So this thinking, feeling, willing, back to that theme now. So here we are, and we come in touch with devotee, and that also is not an accident. And our response to that interaction is also not an accident. Probably do have some, influence from previous lifetimes, because so many thousands and thousands of people millions, they see the Hare Krishna mantra, they know about us, they encounter us online, they may even get a book, but often it goes on the shelf, and someone else sees it. So it's very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have responded to Krishna consciousness with interest and the willingness to take up the process. Now, what is that process when you think about it? It's all attempting to purify, redirect, to train the subtle body, the mind, to wean it away from its entanglement and attraction to Maya and to become more and more attracted to Krishna and the service of God and the service of Krishna and his devotees. In other words, we're and this idea, it's perfectly appropriate to, and Prabhupada often gives it, that we're in a diseased condition. And because everyone else is in the disease, we think it's normal. But actually, we're attempting to be cured of the disease of Maya. In the last verse, some of you may be familiar with this verse, very last verse of the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters of the Rasa dance, it's described how listening to this, hearing the Rasa dance in the right mood from the right source, and glorifying. Vikridatam vajavadubhridam ta Vishnu, Shuddhan Vato, Anushunayada Rabeni Yadya, Bhaktim Param, Paramam, Kama Ridrogamasha Pahanoti, I guess no one knows that verse. Anyway, the meaning is, I'm sorry, I don't have the, my brain isn't as facile as it used to be. I had to review the verses. So what the verse says is that those who hear this pastime of the Rasa dance from the right source and repeat it and listen with faith. I'm sorry, this phone has a tendency to go from silent to noisy on its own. Got a mind of its own, this stupid thing. All right, let me shut it off. Oh, for God's sake. Okay. So if you hear this pastime, now the pastime of the Rasa dance, where Krishna's dancing with other men's wives, he's consorting with the beautiful gopis, and then at night time, which to materialize looks like immorality, but which isn't. It's the highest morality. If you hear it with faith and repeat it, then you quickly attain the highest levels of bhakti, and you cure the disease of lust. Kama ridrogam, the disease of the heart. Now, we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, right from the 3rd chapter, how that disease, that kama, covers our knowledge and keeps us bound to this world, keeps us bound in the shackles of illusion and suffering. Because exactly, it's described perfectly in chapter 4 of the Adi Lila. Atmendriya pritivancha tare boli kam. Krishnam drita priti icha dare prem nam. That one I got right. Famous verse. The difference between kama and prema. They're related. Prabhupada says, kama is nothing but prema that has been adulterated by our contact with the modes of material nature. So kama is defined as the desire, and sometimes powerful, overwhelming desire, to satisfy our own senses. You see? Prema is defined as the desire, often overwhelming, like with the gopis, to satisfy Krishna's senses. So we need to come from kama to prema. What is the process? The process is all the practices of devotional service that we've been given. And you can see the core practice, chanting Hare Krishna, both japa and kirtan, that what's going on? You're hearing this transcendental sound. Now, it's very important to be in the kirtan that's led by a devotee of Krishna. We have to say that because it's also possible to become very expert at chanting and have just a material motivation. But that acts like milk, with poison in it. We have to avoid that. So that's given here in the temple. Okay, it's a devotee. So we're hearing the sound, which is Krishna personified. This is already inconceivable, but we're told that a million times. The name of Krishna and Krishna himself are non-different. So we're getting to associate with Krishna. And that very name, Krishna, means all attractive. Attracting what? Attracting our mind, attracting our senses, attracting our love, away from matter. So this is why it's a very concentrated process, and Prabhupada talks about this, how the feet dance and the hands go up in ecstasy. It's there's one verse I know. It's called Taurya Trikena. Taurya is a combination of singing, dancing, and playing musical instruments. It can be total maya, as we see here on Pacific Beach. There's so many clubs and dances going on, But it can be an agent for transcendence. And this whole process that Lord Chaitanya gave us and revolutionized, Harinam Sankirtan, involves loud chanting and hearing and dancing and, of course, playing musical instruments and singing. This is the whole idea. The very things which can cause our bondage and disease, those very things, when used properly, can be our cure. Prabhupada always gave the example of yogurt and milk. You drink too much milk, too much sweet rice, you get indigestion, But the cure involves a preparation of yogurt. They're both milk, but they're different. Milk and yogurt are the same, but different. They're the same. So the dancing, singing, and playing musical instruments, it may look the same to ignorant people, all they're just having a party, Yeah, Sankirtan party, different than some rave or something, The whole difference is the quality of the sound and your purpose behind it. We're dancing and chanting for Krishna's pleasure, and it's extremely purifying and attracts us away from Maya and to Krishna, And the point is, there's no prerequisites. Nam namakadi bahodani jasarva shaktis. Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna himself, he's in the mood of Radharani. He's addressing Krishna. You have unlimited number of names, Krishna, Govinda, Madhava, etc. And in those names, you've invested your shaktis, your energies. And there's no hard and fast rules for chanting them. This is very important in the context of, because when you get into the Vedas, like this process that Prachanabhari is involved in, right? So many Brahmins, you have to chant the mantras exactly the same way, the right time. Otherwise, you get a contrary result, or you don't get what you're looking for, because it's material, But the process of Harinam Sankirtan is entirely based on love, really. And Lord Krishna is just looking for some sincerity by which you're chanting. He's looking for the quality. Bhava Grahi Janardhan. Not the... Do you know that phrase? I discovered that recently. Some of you may know. It's about pronunciation. It's about... I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to mangle the Sanskrit, but what it means is that the learned person, he sends Vishnaya, Vishnaya. And, Vishnave. And the ignorant person says Vishnaya, because many others like Krishnaya, you'd like that. But there are exceptions. But the result is the same, if they're sincere. Because Bhava Grahi Janardana. Janardana, Krishna, is looking for the feeling. He's looking for the sincerity that you're doing it. He's not looking for, whether you're playing the Mridanga exactly right, although it helps, these guys are good. But I mean, that's not the criteria. Or if you're chanting in tune, that's not it. It's really your sincerity and your desire, So that means everyone is open to. And the result is, very quick purification. Probably, I hear these lectures all the time, and he's often describing how just see, he's giving his students as evidence. A few years ago, they hadn't heard about Krishna at all, And then they came and they were sincere and they started chanting, and now they're like dancing peacocks or something, they're purified, They're called bright-faced. People sometimes come up on the street. Are you Americans? So it's a very great purifying process. And what's the purifying? It's purifying a subtle body and also a gross body. But the main thing is going on is that the mind is getting weaned away from millions of births of absorption and attraction in different varieties of matter. And not just in human life, but in lower life forms and higher life forms. But especially, only the human form really has the opportunity to do this and direct it. So no matter what's happened in our previous life, if we have the good fortune of developing some faith or interest or respect for Krishna consciousness and investigating, opening Prabhupada's, a book by Prabhupada, immediately you're getting the association of a pure devotee. You're hearing the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And there's so many instances, where someone suddenly this is what I'm looking for. I just heard, there's a little, I didn't hear the whole hour and a half, but online there's so many fascinating things going on. So they had this idea of interviewing some of the devotees who participated in the marathon in I don't know if you saw that in Dandavats. The 17 books in 2 months marathon in 1975, and Madhusudan was on there. Did you saw? So he describes when he was working in L.A. We'd already moved. The press was there, and we're going along more efficiently. But and he was saying that when he first heard, he said, "I didn't want to do it," because he had his life organized nicely. He would do a morning program and get breakfast. His wife, Kanchanbala, would cook very nice something, and then he would get to work at 10 o'clock and work until about 5, and then go home and do a little puja. But this was like this was going to blow up everything. And so, but then the other one that I heard, I didn't hear Pushkar, it was Ragatmika.
What was he doing?
He was doing layout, and stuff like that, And Ragatmika told her story, and it was also how she came, This lady was a nun. She was in a convent, She came out of college and she was a strict Catholic. But she got dissatisfied with that, and she wanted to find God. She wasn't satisfied. So she said, let me go to New York City. That's where, there'd be the greatest variety of different religions, and people, I'll get into. So, of course, she met a devotee. And she says, I was very attracted by the 4 regular principles. And she's coming from a convent. And so the devotee was interviewing, he laughed at that. Oh, that's interesting, That's usually not the most attractive part of what you hear about Krishna consciousness. Anyway, so she, eventually got to the press, and she was an extremely fast typist. And so I know her story. She would, this marathon, I wasn't immediately part of it. I got to take part in it after 1 month had passed. But it was, I worked on the 5th canto and also on the Antya-lila to some degree. But the whole idea of it, to take it was just, it was in a different, it was like Prabhupada was challenging the devotees to print 17 books in 2 months. It's unheard of in the publishing sphere. And don't forget, that requires, illustrations. The artists had to surrender so much, because there would be like a assembly line. And, the artists, when you see your painting, wait a minute, it's gone, And so they still didn't have time. So they sent one devotee to India to ride around on a motorcycle to go to different places where Lord Chaitanya had his pastimes to do photographs. So that was how they worked with that. Anyway, there's so many things that Prabhupada was challenging, and that's how you really make advancement. We heard recently how I think Tamal Krishna Maharaj was complaining that the Juhu area was like it was backwater, and there were rats on there and everything. And Kamal said, Prabhupada, we're Americans, we can't live here. So don't you want to make some advancement? So they surrendered, many devotees. So the idea is that when you come into the orbit of Krishna consciousness and you begin to experience, and it could be day 1, hour 1, minute 1, of chanting and seeing the devotees and experiencing the beauty of the deities. And we were hearing how even around the world these deities are very special. So something awakens in the heart. And you're interested in investigating the process, and then at a certain point starting the process, actually taking part in the chanting and going. And this is the great good fortune. Often from previous life, you have some agyata sukriti. There's some service you performed even unknowingly, and it acts in the subtle body, and it means that the next time you come in touch with Krishna consciousness, which Krishna can also arrange, you'll be receptive. You'll be receptive to it, and it'll take. So all of this, when we really take up the process seriously, then we want to consciously use and develop our intelligence to control the mad mind and the senses. The higher self controls the lower self. And so you consciously direct the senses, okay, now, it's time to get, I don't want to get up, obviously, but I have to get up. It's my duty, I've taken a vow, or this is the process, I'm living in the temple, I want to make advancement. So you get up. Getting up at the right time is a big thing. This morning we had a special circumstance, I won't get into the complications of it, but the point is, to rearrange your life and get into the habit, away from bad into good habits, where your mind is ready, to receive and chant and hear and study, and it's being purified, and you're getting strength. You're getting spiritual strength to say no to Maya and yes to Krishna more and more. There's a verse I'm always reminded of. It's kind of an expansion of this Yat Karoshi Yadasnasi verse in the 9th chapter. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer and give away, do as a sacrifice for me. So this is in the 11th canto. It's the 9 Yogendras. And it's a verse that apparently is fairly famous in India. I don't know, but maybe you remember it from childhood. Kayena vacha munasindriyava buddhyatmanava nusasabhavat kadota yadyat sakalam padasmai narayanayeti samarpayetam. That one I kind of have down. So this is it with your body, kayena, with your words, vacha, with your mind, manasindriyava, with your senses, with your intelligence, with yourself, whatever you have, whatever you do, you have this thought behind it. This is an offering to Narayan. This is an offering to Krishna. With every breath, you're feeling, this is, why am I starting the car? Because I'm going to do a mission for Krishna. Why am I walking from here to there? And that, of course, guards against, wait a minute, that's outside the realm of Krishna's service. I'm not going to do that. You see? So this is it's a nice meditation. The Bhagavatam is filled with statements like that. So we're born with certain propensities. A lot of this is all coming from previous life, and the idea is that whatever we have, whatever propensities we have, whatever if it's appropriate, we should try to find a way of dovetailing it and using it in Krishna's service. And that and that's the auspicious path back to Godhead. And just as we learned here in the Bhagavad Gita, and it's a basic point of philosophy, that life is, we never die, which is very encouraging. Najayate mriyate bhava. We're never born, we never die. But in the conditioned state, we forget the previous life, and we also want to forget the future life. And we just try to, and make the most of this life and convince ourselves that that's all there is. But that gross ignorance is sure to produce great suffering. Nunam pramatta kurate vikarma. Rishabdev. Certainly those who are simply he uses the very word indriya priti, which is sense gratification. They're mad if your whole life is dedicated to that. Because it's sure to bring you another birth. And in the present age, you're sure to perform all kinds of sinful activities, which great suffering will ensue. And you'll postpone. We've been postponing for millions and millions of years, postponing your taking up the process that will get you out of this situation. So Narada Muni, this whole series of chapters is culminating now. He's explaining everything. It really is meant, for us to just convince us again, that this is what we should be doing. This regular hearing of Bhagavatam and explanations from the pure devotee is the greatest, most auspicious thing we can be doing for ourselves in this lifetime. And this is not, this kind of philosophy of understanding the transmigration is not so difficult to grasp, and it's something we can share with anyone else. This is great for preaching, because people can understand different propensities you have in this lifetime, and that really, it's my state of mind that is causing me to do this or that or this or that. And this when you understand this revolutionary idea in present day, that the mind doesn't die. The intelligence, that's going to go on. So what you're doing right now, which is all recorded in the mind and gives you, so many different samskaras and so many things, that's going to determine your next body. So don't you want to do what's most auspicious, so you'll have the next best body? We do it in this lifetime. That's why we have an educational system. Parent drags their kid to school. Prabhupada's telling us when he was a child, he never wanted to go to school. He always wanted to play. And his father would indulge him. And he would say, okay, I'll go tomorrow. Okay. But the mother, finally, she was strict. He said, take him to school. And he said they gave him to, some third person, who says, okay, we're going. Bye. We're going to school, Drag you to school. Because the parents know that, it'll have a bad future if you don't get an education. It'll be difficult. So the same idea is here. We'll have a bad future if we don't practice Krishna consciousness. More suffering, birth, old age, disease, and death. This whole world seems to be going, the climate change, everything. Is it really going to be so nice next time? We have a great chance now to practice carefully. So feeling the urgency of it, and then actually going to the right source where we can learn how to practice this yoga, and then engaging in it. This is what Bhagavatam is trying to convince us of here. Okay. I'm going to read this translation again. We can have some discussion. One can understand the mental or conscious position of a living entity by the activities of two kinds of senses: the knowledge-acquiring senses and the executive senses. Similarly, by the mental condition or consciousness of a person, one can understand his position in the previous life. Just really quickly before we go on. The two kinds of senses, knowledge-acquiring senses are commonly what we call the senses. They're all in the head. Seeing, tasting, hearing, touching, and smelling. Those are five. Now, and then this active senses, that's the hands and the feet. Most important sense for a devotee, the voice, active sense. And then the excretory sense and the reproductive sense. That's what executive, he calls them executive here, active senses. So those 10, and then all of them controlled by the mind. So that's the 11th sense. So this is, we understand that, and using all of them, in the Krishna conscious way, where appropriate. That's Krishna consciousness, and that also, trains the mind. The body also affects the mind is affecting the body. Okay, any questions, comments, locally or remote? Here, we have it here. Yeah, give him the key. Yeah, we have one here. We need to reactivate that second mic.
You said that I thought you said that there was a verse about chanting and dancing and playing musical instruments. That word.
Taurya Trikena.
Maybe you could.
You want to hear that verse?
Yeah.
Okay. Ahirupakata lase ki chakarab devaje vardikita tatadhange bringa sangita baji vidachata parichayas chitra taurya trikena stimata kannana vritti bhati kunje vihari. This is the second Kunja Vihara Ashtaka, 8 verses about Krishna enjoying in the forest of Vrindavan by Rupa Goswami in the Stavamala. And this verse describes how the peacocks are dancing, Ahirupakata lase, and the wind is blowing through the bamboo and causing like a musical instrument playing. And the bees are singing their songs and stotras. And Krishna is captivated by this simultaneous singing, dancing, and playing musical instruments. And in this way he's enjoying in the forest of Vrindavan. It's one of 8 verses. I can share with you if you want. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, about this, because we're discussing karma and reincarnation, and people are innocent or people are not innocent, and different things like that. Sometimes, devotees will criticize or say in classes. Sometimes we hear that, oh yeah, in previous ages, people weren't so demoniac. Like they would specifically in war, that it would be men to men, and that's how it would happen. Kshatriya, warrior to warrior. But now people are so fallen, so degraded that they'll just bomb out, some country, and there'll be innocent women and children there, and they'll be killed. And then, aside from that, it's like the Kshatriya's duty is to protect, the innocent. The women, the children, or whoever needs to be protected. And Prabhupada, I was just reading recently, he quoted, what's that guy? He's a famous person, Tagore, is it? Yeah. And Prabhupada, I'm paraphrasing, but it said that Tagore's quoting something where if somebody does harm to you, then, you shouldn't tolerate, you should fight back. So just kind of basing all that, we're just trying to balance all that in relation to karma. Nobody's innocent. Maybe you could comment on that idea. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand, because it's.
And also, some people, it's kind of like this idea of karma, because it's like, oh, I have bad health.
Mm-hmm.
So is that like some sinful reaction, that's some karmic thing? But like Tirtha Maharaj is bringing this point up sometimes, that sometimes devotees, they don't keep this in mind. That's his perception, that, it's action-reaction. So if somehow you don't take care of your health, that's an action, and then a reaction is that you're going to have bad health.
Yeah.
So just like this idea of like, okay, there's a person, and someone may say, oh, he's innocent, but he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he just got shot. So I'm just trying to understand, or trying to balance all that out.
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah.
You're going nuts trying to untangle the skein of karma and the different levels that it's working on. Just like that amazing story, which I've heard several times from Maharaj. The guy jumps off, and he's... Anyway, I won't get into the story. It's a suicide. No, it's a murder. No, actually, it's a suicide. But it's almost like no one could write that, So there's different levels to understand it. The fact that we understand that nobody is innocent, because you're trying to explain to somebody, and these are people who doubt that there's any reincarnation, and they often use there's any God. I remember I hit that brick wall with my brother once. I was trying to preach, make him interested in Krishna consciousness, and he threw up the Holocaust to me. This is a big thing. The Holocaust was like so many millions, of Jews were killed, and many of them were just women and children. How do you explain that? How could God allow that? So the last thing they want to hear is that every one of them had a background, that caused that. I tell this story happened. This was in the last 10 years. The coach of one of the leading soccer teams in the UK. I don't know if some of you may know this story. And somehow he made a statement. No, I think it was a professional. He was famous. He was, nation. At least in the UK, he was famous. And he made a statement that disabled people, it's their karma. Maybe he read one of our books, or I don't know. He learned it, and it caused such a furor to try to say that they bear some responsibility for that's the thing, that he was kicked out of his job. He lost it. So. But the fact is that the law of karma, the laws of nature, an infallible justice. It's not an accidental thing. Now you may say, and Prabhupada encourages, would take care of your health, don't overeat. You know what I mean? It's not like, that we don't do that. But the fact that someone is overeating, or someone is doing something, worse for his health, that's also part of the karma. that you have that propensity and that no one is around to, take you by the head. Hey, you're ruining your health, or your mother. That it's all a larger scheme, the thing. And so, to accept, we accept that Krishna is all powerful. How could you not, right? And that he's all merciful. And so, how does that mercy? I mean, this comes up in the Bhagavatam. How you say, well, how could the Pandavas, they're Krishna's intimate servants, how could they be going through so much suffering? How could Krishna let that happen? Yes, I was going to bring that up. You talk about war today. Well, that was, near the beginning of Kali Yuga. Here you have this Brahmin, Ashwatthama, who kills children in their sleep. Now I was wondering about that. Were they on the battlefield? Who brought them on the battlefield? Or did he go and sneak around back to, New Delhi or something? Do you know? Yeah, I know. How do you have young children there? Why in a war field? They were young men. They were 16. Okay. But anyway, they were sleeping. It's just completely out of bounds. You know what I'm saying? It's just terrible, sinful activity. So the idea is that Krishna is in control. He's in control. You're not. There's no accidents. And so how to see how this the different complications in the background of your activity to produce a certain effect is not possible to figure that out. And so that's why we accept it. Krishna's not capricious. It's not an accident that we're here, and that the vast majority of living entities, 3/4 say, are in the spiritual world. They never come here, and we're here. Did we just draw a short straw? Was it? You know what I'm saying? There's some idea there. Like if you have this idea, anadi karma is literal. We've always been here. And now we can practice Krishna kindness, and get out and never come back. But we didn't fall from the spiritual world. Then how do we get out? Why? We're just the unlucky quarter? That doesn't make sense. Prabhupada rejected it. That's not it. No, we turned away. And this is all the result, one after another. And trying to untangle, how it happens. And because then inevitably, you get toward the edge of saying, well, why me? But this is why we have the examples like of the Pandavas. They suffered so much, but they never blame Krishna. Just the opposite. Kunti says, "Vipadak santatakshasvad." May these things. She went through some of the things that happened: the poison, the poisoning, the exile, the war itself. Let them happen again and again because we see you. We feel more dependent on you. We call out to you with more desperation than you're present. You're present with us more. So then we see you. Then we don't have to see birth and death again. So yes, from one point of view. Now, this is pertinent also at the very beginning of the Gita, of Krishna's instructions in the Gita. Of course, he has those famous verses: "You're lamenting for what's not worthy of grief." And then, we've always existed in the past, we exist now. And then he says, Dehinosmin yata dehe. That just as the soul is going through, it will eventually leave this body and attain another body. That famous verse, Dehinosmin. And so that, this is, anyway, I don't want to harp on this idea. But the translation, it wasn't Prabhupada's words. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. I always thought that verse when I read it. I was reading the Macmillan Gita for years, 1973 on. And that meant, those who die, but they're self-realized, they're not disturbing. That's not what he's saying there. The Dhira refers to those who are seeing that, because that's what Arjun's position was. He didn't want to kill his teacher and worshipful grandfather and other relatives, And so Krishna says, don't be disturbed by it. But you will be disturbed. Because we have all this affection. Therefore, your favorite verse, Yam hin abhidhyantayate purusham purushashava. This is one of the first verses you learn, right? After matra sparshas, you have to tolerate The heat and cold, pleasure and pain, they come and go. Just tolerate. And those who can tolerate and are not disturbed, even in this situation, they're eligible. They alone are eligible for liberation. So coming to that point of equipoise involves being able to, experience, or even with loved ones, see the suffering that's going on, and not lose faith in God, and have confidence in the process, and continue with our bhakti yoga practice. So it's it's not easy. I mean, the Holocaust is a big deal, and it's a big obstacle, because it really is. It's not an accident that there's been so much atheism. One second, developed after World War II, in Europe especially, because there's so much they went through and they couldn't believe that a God would allow it. Go ahead, Barj.
Thank you.
Hare
I'll
Krishna.
try and be very succinct on a vast subject.
Okay.
Two things came to mind: compassion versus observation of karma.
Mhm.
That's a really important point that relates to the conversation. And the other point is that free will trumps destiny, karma.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, like you say, no one can figure out the Krishna says, no one can
Yeah.
figure out the intricacies. Like you quoted, no one's there to help them with overeating. That was an example you used.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people would love to overeat, but they don't have the karma to be able to
Even eat.
Yeah, yeah. Karma is definitely there.
Yeah, yeah.
But when asked, I think it was by Yamaraj at the lake, to Yudhishthir, destiny is always overcome by endeavor,
Mm-hmm.
which is really the essence of free will. So if the modes aren't too heavy, or if you get good association, which also has some degree with desire and the karma,
Yeah.
then you'll be able to make the right choice to avert what the pushing is, or overcome your karma even.
Yeah, but I think that if that free will is dedicated toward bhakti,
Krishna.
then Krishna, then I have a chance. Otherwise, it looks like you're, but you're just getting entangled in another direction. That's the idea. I agree with that. Sure. We have a question from our guest.
So,
Sorry, I'm not. Have you been here before?
I have a couple of times.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't recognize because of the
My name is
mask.
Travis.
I vote Travis.
So my question is, if the Atman has always existed, our soul, individual soul, has always existed, and it's always been with God, in a sense, because God's connected to us, right?
Yes, we're always connected.
We
Yeah,
come from Brahman.
yeah.
So my question is, does karma affect God then? Because how else would we arise from God if we're tangled in Maya right now, and we've always existed? That had to have came at one point in time.
What came at one point?
We would have had to have become disillusioned with reality, with being one with God.
Yeah, well,
God.
yeah.
So how did that happen? And when?
The only answer is it's a very common question. The usual thing is, we hear about it, and I believe it, that in the spiritual world it's just so blissful, and dancing and chanting with Krishna. Why would we ever leave? Why would we ever come to this place? That doesn't make any sense, and it is pretty stupid. So it doesn't make much sense. But here's where our free will comes in, because Krishna is supremely independent. He can do whatever he wants, whatever he wills happens, right? We are part and parcel of Krishna, so we have a minute quantity of independence. This is our nature, and this means that love can have some meaning. Love has meaning when you can also withdraw it. Otherwise, Prabhupada says, Krishna doesn't want us to love him at the point of a pistol. That's not love. He wants us to voluntarily give it. So, since we have free will, and we're marginal potency, meaning that we can choose to be influenced by the material energy or by the spiritual energy. And those who are in the spiritual world, they're eternally liberated, nitya mukta, they say, nitya siddha. They'll never make that, or they haven't made that decision in eons, and then he never will, meaning that they're always voluntarily serving Krishna out of love. But we got curious. You know, what would it be like to be the enjoyer rather than the enjoyed, to give Krishna enjoyment? We want to be the master and the controller. And so that can't happen in the spiritual world. Everyone is completely harmonious there. We become a disturbance. So we're given this field by Maya, by Krishna's illusory energy. That's what Maya presents it with us with. And so we have a chance to try to enjoy and control, but we can become more and more degraded if we follow that path, you see? And we can come down all the way from Brahma or some demigod or even the spiritual world and become a human being or even lower. The same soul is progressively covered more. Like you find the trees, they're also souls, but they're practically unconscious, you know, they're so covered over. So it's a process of, and in that darkness that we are in, we're helpless. We need an intervention, and that's why Krishna comes himself, or he sends his representatives, pure devotees, who are not covered, but take the task, you know, of being in this world, and so trying to find some receptive souls who can realize, okay, this was a bad idea. Let me go back to serving Krishna. So that's how it works. We're one with Krishna in the sense that we have the quality of Satchidananda, intrinsically, eternity, bliss, and knowledge. And we also have that minute independence. But when we want to exercise it independently of Krishna, then we're put under the control of Maya. And we can stay here for who knows how long until we see the light, you know.
So basically, it's a learning lesson, basically, because we created a disturbance. So now we're here, basically, to learn how to get out of it.
Yes, we have to learn a lesson. That's why we're sitting in class.
Makes sense. I like it. I like it.
All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.